Well, good morning. Welcome to Melco. Mike Doe, part of the applications team here. I've got my good friends Scott Stingle here with me as well. He's kind of off camera, and good old Mr. Nate Moore is here with me as well.
Hey y'all.
Oh, so we have a little echo going on here. We're going to take care of real quick. There we go. Is that coming from?
Is that mine? Yeah, it's yours. You got it.
Cool. So sorry about that. So we're here today talking about applique, and we're going to try to walk you through from the beginning all the way through the end of applique as quick as we possibly can, but also as thorough as we can. So what is applique? Why use applique? How is it used? Those are kind of the questions that maybe you're asking yourself. You may have never seen applique. It goes by a different name as well. It's called tackle twill, or sports twill is another name. And the other thing that I want to mention right off the bat is if you have any questions about applique, feel free to post them. I may get to the answer without your post, but I may not. So make sure that you're posting your answers. We've got both gentlemen here to help me answer them, to shout out the questions. So maybe we can say, you know, Nancy is asking this question, so who knows, maybe you'll get your name mentioned in this Facebook Live post. So first of all, what is applique? Let me grab a couple samples. I'll be right back here. And so, what is applique? So applique is when we're taking and we're replacing stitches or having large areas or even small areas of what normally would be stitches, and we replace it with twill material. So in this duck, and it might be kind of hard to see off of the screen, but the shiny green up here, or teal, and orange down below of his bill, those are pieces of twill, pieces of fabric. So they actually look like this. So it's literally a piece of material that we're going to show you first how to digitize, and then second, either how to hand cut it if you don't have a vinyl cutter, and we'll show you how to use a vinyl cutter if you have one or you're interested in getting one. So that's kind of a basic of what it looks like, and I'm going to just throw that out of my way for a minute. Some of the other cool things that you can do with it is a split front twill. And I believe we've got a document on this.
Sue did a video on it. Yeah.
Oh, Sue did a video. So we'll try to find that video and get that one linked to this. But it's a great video. Sue Gorton did it. Sue's a wonderful person. And she actually, I don't know if you guys knew this, but she was my trainer when I started with Melco equipment as a customer way back in the day. So very cool split front, meaning that you know, it's not fully across. And then I believe this one was created by Nate. It's really cool. So it's a snow globe, and it might be, once again, kind of hard to see off the screen. Some of you have probably seen this if you've come into Melco or gone to some of our trade shows, but there's a clear piece of plastic, or what is this called?
Vinyl.
Vinyl, thank you, with some snowflakes inside of it. And if you shake it, you can see those snowflakes going up and down, and the poor snowman's getting shaken snowman syndrome. So really cool idea for an applique. And then we've got one that we've been showing off the last couple years at the show, where the Constitution in the back is printed and cut vinyl that's got the very small text that we wouldn't be able to do normally in embroidery. And then we sewed over the top of it with embroidery. So it's a combination of the two, using the laser registration, laser alignment. By the way, just a plug, we'll be doing this laser registration, laser alignment coming up in the next, I think, 2 or 3 weeks from now. One of the boys, I think Nate is doing that one, yep. So we'll be going over the basics of laser registration as well. So one of you guys asked for that, we'll be doing it. So that's kind of what applique is. Why we would use it is, once again, it gives us the ability to introduce different media types to get different effects than embroidery would do, and It also allows us to reduce the amount of stitches that we're putting into a design, so it doesn't feel like, you know, it weighs 20 pounds from all the stitches on it. So there's probably other whys there, but that's the general highlight whys. When would I use it? I think it probably speaks for itself. You know, I wouldn't want to sew in 12-inch numbers on the back of someone's football jersey with full stitches. You know, 12-inch number, let's say they're number 22 with a second color around the outside. I would guess if we did that all in stitches, we'd be at maybe 150,000 stitches, 150,000 at least, if not more. So that'd be a lot of stitches. So that's a great place to use twill. In fact, it is used. Sometimes that twill is sublimated. And so there's a lot of different methods that you can use for that, but that's kind of a when you would use it. And so there's, once again, there's probably a lot more reasons why and when to use it. In fact, you guys use it. I'm just a user. Post some reasons on our Facebook Live here of why you would use it or when you would use it. We're talking about Applique Sports Twill. Once again, Mike Doe at Melco, part of the applications team, here with my two amigos, Mr. Scott Stingle.
Good morning, everyone.
Mr. Nate Moore.
Hey guys.
And so, yeah, if you're just joining us, welcome. So if we could switch over to the computer, Nate. So let's talk about how this is done. My good friend Scott Stingle digitized this design for me, and I just want to walk through the process of this design. Now, I want to throw out, there is a link at the very beginning of the comment section or in the video section of this posting of Facebook that says sign up for free designs. The applique duck, as you've seen it a couple times now, you will be able to get that by signing up. We'll email it to you once you've signed up. We'll also be giving away the Cardinal logo. So two beautiful designs. They use the 44 by 30, I believe. Mm-hmm. So you'll be able to use the 44 by 30 plastic hoop or the 43 centimeter square if you have that one. Either one of those will work really well for it. There might be some big mighty hoops out there that I just can't remember all the different hoops we've got that'll fit this design, but there's some of them out there. You'll figure it out. We'll get you the designs, but they're awesome. So let's go back. I'm sorry, Nate, I got going. So what we're going to do is we're going to just walk through the design and talk about how we digitize for applique. Just a hint, and I'm going to jump over to some of my good friends. Sam did one a while back that is on Applique too, all about applique. She is one of our application team members, remote application team members. Awesome lady, did a wonderful job on this video. So shout out to Sam. But you can watch this video. You might get some different insights from her than you're going to get from us today. So great video to watch. And then there is another video, and I believe we have this linked as well. This link, both of those links. Okay, okay, cool. And this is a design shop video on how to digitize for applique. So we're not going to go into depth on how to digitize for the applique. So there are some tools for you to go watch that if we try to do it here would take us, we'd be here for half a day showing all these things. So these are great tools to get to. So let's go back to Design Shop, and I want to make note to everybody that I am running at the Design Shop level with the vector option on. That seems to be the most common version of software that everybody is using right now. So I want to throw this out. What I'm showing you is able to be done in that Design Shop level with the vector option. Okay, Design Shop level with vector option. So we're going to walk through this design, and here's the whole design. So that's the full duck. Now you'll see if I turn the graphic on, you'll see the backgrounds that are simulated there. Beautiful design. So we're going to walk through the duck itself, and the first piece that we have is the duck's head. And so you'll see that it's got a pink line. That is our walk stitch that eventually when we sew the design out will be our trace stitch to lay that, that head piece or the teal piece of his feathers down. And then the next thing that will happen is we'll want to tack that down. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to use these two pink pieces, so element 1 and element 3, we're going to use those to cut our pieces here in a minute. So just remember that. So after we place the head, we would want to come in and tack that down. We're not going to do all the embroidery over the top of it to begin with. We're going to just tack it down so it doesn't move on us when we're working on the bill part. The next part that we're going to do is the bill. So this is the big orange piece that's kind of his jowls. I guess a duck doesn't really have jowls, do they? They don't really have teeth either, do they? Or they're like little bristly teeth? I don't know. Post and let us know if duck have teeth.
I haven't bitten by a duck in a long time.
Yeah, I remember. They can snap at you pretty good though. Or are those geese? Maybe those are geese.
Geese, yes.
Yep. So, and then we're going to tack that piece down as well. And then all the embroidery is going to go over the top of it. So this is how all the other pieces are going to lay in. Once again, we're not going to go into detail of how Scott did such an awesome job on digitizing this logo. You can kind of dissect it when you get it. But the big pieces that I want to throw out are these cut lines. So we're going to go back to that for a minute. And we're going to grab element 3 just because it's a little bit larger and a little bit more exciting to see in action. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this piece and we're going to take and do this in a way that if we didn't have a vinyl cutter, we could actually do this. Do we have a question, Nate?
No, sorry.
Okay, I just saw a hand. So, so we're going to take this piece and we're going to load it. What I did was, I'll show you a design that I put together so you don't have to be bored with me doing it. I took and put two pieces together that fit into the 44 by 30. So I don't want to waste any twill, any material. And if we could go back to the main screen for a minute. So before I show you sewing that out to a way that we can hand cut it out, let's talk about where we get twill, what materials we can use. So a couple different companies. Once again, we have the links for these companies at the beginning of this post. But Twill USA is a really good one. We actually this morning just got in their stuff. For $5, I think it was, I got samples for everybody and the team here, Scott, Nate, and I, of all the different materials that they have. So they carry sports twill that has the backing that can be pulled off and is sticky on the back already. So instead of having to use spray adhesive, you can put it down. The other nice thing is after you've sewn your applique, this material is able to be taken and heat pressed to the material so it binds to that material, and when it's washed, the two kind of become one. Instead, if you don't have that material that bonds to the garment or the product that you're putting it on, when you wash it, sometimes you'll start to get little like waves in the applique, and that doesn't give you a really good result. So if you're not using a material, a twill that has this on it, what I would suggest is getting some materials, and my good friend Nate has hooked me up. This is a material that allows us to take and apply to the back of normal materials. So let me grab some samples here. So I've got some just plain old fabric that doesn't have anything to it. It's like a suede material. I think he probably picked this up at like Joann's. Michael Fabrics, okay.
No, microfiber.
Microfiber, sorry. So Joann's microfiber. And so what he did is he took this stuff and he applied it. I'll make sure I'm grabbing the right stuff. He applied it to it. Now this does not have any sticky adhesive to it. So what we would want to do is use some embroidery spray adhesive. And we have a couple different brands of it here. And I think, did we put the links up on the page? Or do I just have them open?
We put, I don't remember, Madeira, and you can look at it over there. But Judy has a really good point.
Yeah?
She's calling out Heat and Bond. That is a brand that does the same thing.
Yeah, good point, Judy. Yep, so that's the idea, but you definitely, if you really want a good quality after the wash, it's important to use that heat bond type of material. And you know, if you get stuff that doesn't have stick to it, you definitely want a little bit of tackiness to it when you lay it down, and we'll get to that point here in a minute. But you want to apply something to the back of it. This stuff comes in a couple different materials. Can we switch over to the screen for a minute? So I believe Nate has pulled up some cool links for me, so it reminds me of everything. So for example, there's this this heat seal stuff from Madeira. It comes in a 3mm and a 5mm, and Nate was telling me this morning that he really likes to use the 3mm for the lighter products like maybe baby wear or stuff that's a little bit more delicate. And then he'll use the 5mm more for like jackets, sweatshirts, sports apparel, stuff that needs a little bit more rigidity to it. So good things. And then we also wanted to point out the spray adhesive. It's really important, like we've talked about in the past, maybe back to the main screen. It's really important that you use embroidery spray adhesive so that we're not gumming up our needles, we're not gumming up our machine, our hooks, things like that, because if you start doing that or you're spraying it around the machine, yeah, it's really bad. We've gone into places where the thread goes down into the thread tube, these little white plastic things. They'll have so much spray adhesive built up on them that you can't even stick the thread down through it, and it causes just tons of thread breaks. So if you use spray adhesive, try to do it away from the machine. And most importantly, make sure that you're not using non-embroidery spray adhesive. Yeah, there's some stuff, fabric spray adhesives that you can pick up from Joann's. Just make sure that the stuff is meant for sewing or embroidery, okay? Thank you. So you can use different types of materials. You can buy sports twill. We talked about Twill USA. Somewhere that we've done a lot of business with to this point is we've used the stuff for from Stalls. So Stalls has got some really good stuff as well. I'm excited. I've had some of you come up to me at the Irving show and the Atlantic City trade shows that we just had the last month or so, and told me that the Twill USA stuff doesn't have a tendency to give you the little black gummy beads that pop up on top of the material when you're sewing applique. So I'm excited to see that. Not that that affects anything, because usually we'll just either take a dry, clean paintbrush and swipe it off, or some canned air or compressed air and blow it out of the way. But it'll just be interesting to see how that stuff works. So maybe we'll post back on the results of that, seeing how we just got in today. So yeah, so now let's talk about, we've got our twill. We are now ready. How do we get our applique pieces? So what I've got is, I'm going to pull this guy out and kind of show you for a minute. And so what I've got is, I've got a piece of the twill that I just took and put in the 44x30 hoop. And if we can go back to the main screen or the computer screen for a minute, you can see that I've got the designs loaded up in OS. Let me get OS pulled up. And so I've sewn one out already. I'm going to take and put this bad guy back in there. I don't know why he's a bad guy, but I just figured I'd throw that out there. So let's get him loaded back up. And so once he is loaded, we're going to go ahead and take and sew the last one out. And so let's let him sew out.
I'm not myself, I need you to repeat this, but if you have something that's really grained,
Yep.
you can't just rotate those lines the other way.
Yeah, so what Nate is saying is if you've got a material that's got a pattern to it or a grain to it, you can't just take and rotate the designs to make the best out of the material. Luckily with this twill that I'm using, it's really hard. Like, you would have to get super, super close to it to be able to see the grain of the twill. But yeah, if you're using a material that has got a pattern to it or a grain to it, you definitely wouldn't want to rotate the patterns to the applique pieces around. So now that we've got this done, what we're going to do is, this is how we are going to do it if we don't have a vinyl cutter. So we're going to take and sew the trace stitch out, And then we're going to unhoop the material. Don't throw your hoops like I just did. And I'm going to grab a pair of scissors, and I'm going to take, and this may be hard for you to see, but I'm going to take and hand cut, and I'm going to just do a little bit of this so you're not bored watching me do it. But I'm going to take and hand cut that twill piece out, and then once I'm done with that, the piece that I'm going to end up with will look something like this, okay? So another way that we can do it, if you're doing a lot of applique, if you're going to get into doing a lot of applique, is we can look at getting a vinyl cutter. Now you're going to say, Mike, you're talking about twill and you just said a vinyl cutter. How you lost me. Well, here's how that works. A vinyl cutter like the Roland GS24, which we've got a link on our posting here, you have the ability to get blades, and I probably can't get this close enough, but these blades are meant for twill. So they're the angle of the blade, like a vinyl blade is 45 degrees usually, and a twill blade is going to be more like at a 60 degree. So there is different blades. Some people ask, well, does it make sense to get the carbide versus the non-carbide? Usually the carbide is about 3 or 4 times more expensive off the top of my head if I remember right. I don't care for the carbide tips. What usually ends up happening to a cutter blade is the very point of it. So we're only about a business card worth sticking out of the tip of the cutter. That tip actually has a tendency to break or get dull, not the actual sharpness of the blade. So carbide typically gets a little bit more brittle, kind of like titanium and needles, as Nate was talking about before, I believe. So I don't like them. I personally like to get the Econo pack. I'm not big into getting the premium blades, but everybody's different. So I just get the normal blades. These are from Stahl's, really good twill blades. And so the Roland GS24, jump over to the screen for a minute. This is what's cool. So once again, I want to point out that I am in design shop level with the vector option, okay? So just to be clear that that's what I'm in, I want to show you guys a trick. So I'm going to go back to the duck. So here's the duck. I can take, and I'm going to turn the whole design on for a minute so you can see the whole guy. And let me get my mouse to work for me. There it is. I'm going to take and select the tray stitch or the locator stitch. Some people call this different. We'll explain what that is. You're going, I don't know what that is, Mike. So I'm going to take this element 3. I'll get to why you don't know what that is and what it is. But I'm going to take and copy that. So I have it selected. I can either do a Control-C to copy it, or I can go up and do Edit Copy. And the cutting software that we use is Cut Studio. This comes with the Roland GS24. And here's the neat thing, is I can just take and do a Control-V or an Edit Paste, and that element, as long as it was done in wireframe and not an expanded design, I can take and it brings it right into, let me zoom in here, I can bring that piece right into our cutter. So I can bring this guy in, I can set him, and this represents my page or my material roll layout. And so I can take and put this in there. Do we have a question?
I'm going to argue with Judy in a minute, but you
okay.
Keep going.
Okay. Judy has got a lot of good questions, it sounds like. Go, Judy. So you can see I can place this piece, and I actually want to get the cutter going. So let me, once again, I hate to waste twill, so I'm going to take copy paste, and I'll move the second one over here, kind of like this. I'm pretty sure I can't get 3 of them out of there, so we'll just do that. And yep.
Emphasize not to scale it.
Yeah. So when you paste these into the software and the cut software, after you pasted it, do not take and resize it because it will not match to what Design Shop did and or what's in OS. So make sure you do not resize it If you're rotating, that's okay, as long as the grain doesn't get messed up on you on the material. So now we're going to take and cut this. So if we could go to the split screen. All right, here we go. So I'm going to send this guy over, and I'll move over. So you'll see the cutter actually going, and you'll see down below where I've already pulled one out. But this is how quick, you know, if I had to cut 2 of these by myself, it probably took me about 3 or 4 minutes to sew it out, probably 30 to 45 seconds to hoop it, and probably another couple minutes easily to cut them out, versus if I come over here and pull this guy out, you can see that my piece is ready to go. So it's that simple with a vinyl cutter with a twill blade. The other thing about that is you can cut other things. Yeah, it's a vinyl cutter, so you can cut vinyl. You can either use adhesive vinyl or vinyl that is used for like 1 color or 2 color numbers on the back of soccer jerseys, football jerseys, baseball jerseys. So there's a lot of different things you can use the GS24 for. If you've got the Roland BN20, which is a printer and cutter, so it allows you to print on vinyl and then cut it, that BN20 with the twill blade that we were just talking about can also cut twill. So you could use it for multiple different things. The Roland product, the vinyl cutter, vinyl print cutter, is very versatile to do a lot of different things. So I'm going to take a break here. Do we have questions?
Wow, something just popped up. But yeah, Judy was, when you were talking about tack down or locator versus cut line.
Yep.
Or you also called it something else. She said it might also be a tack down, and those are typically different things, so I need you to talk about that.
Yeah, so good point. Yeah, so two different things. So what Nate was just talking about is Judy was saying that the locator or the tray stitch could also be the tack down. Typically not. So what we would do, let's go back to the screen for a minute. I'm going to go back to Design Shop to explain this. So how my good friend Scott set this up is he did what is called the locator stitch. And so we're going to do this on the machine here in a minute. We'll sew out this part, and then we'll put in an applique pause in our design, in our color sequence in OS. And after, when that applique pause comes in, we lay our piece down, our applique piece that we just cut either by hand or by the cutter, and then it pulls in and it does what's called the tack down. So this zigzag, and let me zoom in so you can really see it, this zigzag is actually our tack down. So once again, if we back up, zoomed in, this pink line, and let me make it a little bit brighter for us, that is going to sew out first on the product, and it's going to tell us where to place the applique piece. Then we're going to have an applique pause in our color sequence. Then we're going to press start, and the first thing to sew will be the zigzag stitch to tack it down. Now in some cases, like in jerseys, sports jerseys, things like that, the zigzag is actually called a tackle twill stitch, kind of a unique looking stitch, but similar to a zigzag stitch. And that's it. That's all we're going to do. In the case of the duck, we actually will eventually go over it with some other elements. So hopefully, Judy, that clarifies the difference between the locator stitch, and everybody's got a different name for that part, locator, trace, identifier. But really what we're doing is we're laying down a walk stitch. Usually it's a walk stitch with a couple lock stitches at the beginning and the end that tells us where the outline of the piece of twill that we cut is going to be laid down onto it. So I hope that helps clarify that part.
With some Homer quilters, they'll
Yeah.
just lay the material down and sew only the locator and trim around it. So
Oh.
it is kind of the same thing for some people.
For non computerized embroidery equipment, if you're hand running that stuff, I could see where you could do it all in one shot and then use a pair of what's called applique scissors to trim around the edges for sure. But in our world, where kind of the computer is guiding the machine to do its thing, we have to kind of get back involved on where to lay that piece down. I mean, you could take and use the locator stitch, tack down your twill, and then take those scissors and cut around it. But to be honest with you, I have a tendency, even with those round tip applique scissors, I'll end up cutting something either too short. I just would rather know that it's right. So it's just, that's, you know, if you're using that way, go for it. But this is another way you can do it. So
Jacqueline also has a question. Can this be used with the DTG printing?
yeah, Jacqueline.
Boom.
Good question. Thank you. So mixed media. So I'm going to find the bag that I threw down here. I don't have the Colorado design, so we have a really cool printed bag from the Epson F2100 that, and once again, it's kind of hard to see. Maybe I can lay it down and you can see it, but you'll see this light brown up in here. That would be the print from the DTG, and then you would want to, in your design, you would bring in your print design and you would layer the embroidery over the top of it using the laser alignment tool. So there's some really good videos on mixed media, how to digitize for the mixed media, how to do it on the DTG side that John LeDrew, our director of digital, did, and then another one of my ugly mug, adding the embroidery to what Mr. LeDrew did, and that's that Colorado design. So check that out, but that's a great question. You could use direct to garment right onto the product and then add some embroidery over the top of it for sure. Other questions? Cool. All right. How are we doing on time? Am I doing okay?
You're
Yeah.
half hour.
Half hour. Cool. We're doing great. So what we're going to do next is I've got a product hooped up. We've got a product hooped up, and so let me grab that product. And one thing that you guys might have noticed in some of the videos recently that showed Scott at the Irving show putting some material onto the machine is we actually hooped the jacket, or in the case of what Scott showed, we hooped it upside down. So you can see that the hoop tab is down at the bottom here. And so the reason we do that, if you've got a product that's got a large design, and usually the neck area is going to be much tighter than the waist area, at least, you know, for me it's getting pretty close. My neck gets wider, but waist does too. Anyways, just making a personal fat joke at myself, so it's okay. I'm working on it though. So yeah, you can hoop things upside down and rotate the design right side or upside down. And what that allows you to do is there's not a bottleneck or not a constraint on the machine as it's moving, which could give you like an X tracking error or a Y tracking error. And when we get those, we get frustrated. We're like, why? Why is there one? More times than not, it's because we've got something bound, and instead of the machine tearing itself apart, it stops and says, hey, when you see those errors, check around the neck and make sure, like hoods, as Nate is grabbing his hood and showing it to me, you know, look to see what's going on. I'll give you a story, and I know I said I wouldn't do many stories, but when I started with Melco, I had a EMT 10T, and this was like 3 days before Christmas. This drumline here in town, I think it was Longmont Drumline, ordered like 5 or 6 dozen hoodies to give out as Christmas presents to their performers. So I'm hooping up these hoodies on my EMT 10T, and now the EMT 10T didn't have this ability to stop if something was bound. Well, I got one of the drawstrings up into the hook area, and it sucked the drawstring into the hook area, and the machine did not stop until the hook was completely spun out. So luckily I only live about a mile away from the factory, and I begged somebody to come over and reset that because obviously I was dead in the water. But nowadays you'll find that with the Maya system, it is actually the board is looking at how much power is going to each motor, and instead of doing damage to the machine, it'll give us an error, a tracking error when that happens. So don't get frustrated when you see those. Actually look to see what's going on. And a good thing is to remember this, and this is hard for me to remember. X is left to right, okay? So if you get an X tracking error, usually it means it cannot go left to right. Something is bound up on it. Y is going to be forward and back, right? So X, left to right, forward and back is Y, and then Z is our needle. So X, Y, Z. Not as talented as Chris. Don't get that wrong. So, oh, and by the way, I'm wearing my Rockies hat today. someone had mentioned, you didn't have any embroidery on the other day. So for my embroidery today, I wore my Rockies hat. They're not very good this year. They were supposed to be, but they're still my team and I love them. So, all right, let's get back to it. So we're going to take and put our hooped garment on. And you'll notice, even in the video of Scott doing this, you'll notice him reach up and grab the waistline of the hoodie, or in my case, the jacket. And we want to pull that up, and then we'll take and tuck it into this bucket back here. And the reason for that is back here in the corners, if we leave that thing hanging down, when it's sewn over in the corners of the product, that's where it can get bound and give us one of those X or Y tracking errors. So just make sure that the corners are really nice and cleared and tucked up into the bucket behind the hoop arms, okay? So once we have that in, let's go back to the screen for a minute. Sorry, Nate. Nate's ready to...
I was typing.
Nate's ready to take me to lunch, I think. So, all right, so here we go. So I loaded the design, and what I'm going to do is we're going to just take and we'll sew this, but we're going to do 3, 3, 3, applique. Now, I don't want you to pay attention to the first 2 colors of the design because I'm going to kind of jump forward in the design to color 3. So how I can jump forward in the design is I can use the, if I go to Tools, Settings, and then Move, I can say color 3, and I can move to it. And so that moves me to that part of the design. So I'm skipping past sewing the green part down to the duck, just so I can show you the locator stitch and then how we place the orange. So we're at color 3 of the design. And now if we switch over, Nate, to the machine. Okay, and let me, you know what, someone's going to mention this on Facebook. I just changed my design to be the 43 centimeter square. So don't shoot me for not having the right hoop selected. I just changed it. And let me just get this moved in the right place of the hoop. So it's actually in hoop limits. Now, another thing that you'll see, I'm actually moving the machine, and on screen, which we can't show both at the same time, you won't see it change on the screen until you push the up and the down arrow together. So once you push those, it'll actually move to the right spot. Now that I have that, I'm going to go ahead and sew. So this is, once again, what we're talking about doing is we're going to sew down the locator stitch. So it'll be the same stitch that we did for the manual hand cut, but what this will do is tell us where to place our applique piece. So here we go. So applique is a wonderful, wonderful thing. A lot of embroiderers, for some reason, do not offer applique to their customers. You should be charging in a premium, even though it takes less time, more times than not, to do it. You should be charging a premium for applique. What that cost is in your world, you have to figure that out, but you should be charging an upcharge for applique. Okay, so now that we've got that line, and we might have to adjust, can we adjust this camera a little bit? Oh, there it is. You know what you're doing. I'll just hush. I'm going to take this guy, and I'm going to place him so that I don't see any of the locator stitch underneath it. So something like that. Now, the deal is you don't want to be pushing down on this material. And if we go back to that view you were just at, this one I think works better, and I'll just move my hand over. If you're going to push on it, take and put your hand below. So see how the material is moving up? I just have my hand down below. Now you don't want to do that while the machine's running, by no means. But while the machine is at idle and an applique pause, I can put my 2 hands together and I can sandwich that applique material. It's important, this is where the tack down part is important, to have that tackiness, because if not, if that wasn't tacky, as we start doing the tack down stitch, this material is going to move and more than likely ripple on me and not be in the right spot. So make sure to do that and use your hands as a guide, or some people actually use some of the small tabletops for the machine for larger applique pieces. Pretty cool stuff. Scott, you got
So
something?
one little confusion here. They want to know, do we take the hoop out of the machine and iron it?
Oh,
And it'd be done at the end, right?
yeah. Good question. Who asked that question?
Sorry.
No problem. I just like to.
Water jets work great for high volume appliques
Water,
too, huh?
water jets are awesome for a lot of reasons.
Tracy.
Great question, Tracy. We're not going to heat press the material, the applique material, to the product until after all the embroidery is done. So once we have the full, and I can do this in the speed of technology, once we have the design completed like this, we would want to take and unhoop. Don't throw your hoops on the ground, people. We would want to take this and put it onto our heat press and then press it per the guidelines of the twill or the whatever that stuff is called. Yeah, the tacky stuff. So don't do your heat press stuff until after.
I have seen people use a photographer's tack iron to tack it down on the fabric when they're doing it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's like a little bitty iron on a stick.
Oh, it looks like an iron for Keeblers, like Keebler elves.
A little bit.
That's what I think they use to do their little suits. So,
because
yeah.
Madeira sells them, they're little, they plug in electrical.
Yeah,
So that is an option too.
that is an option. I don't know how productive or efficient that would be, but yeah, it is an option. Is there any other questions?
There's a lot of questions.
Yeah,
Awesome!
Yeah.
Woohoo!
And there's margin for error too with this.
Right.
You don't have to be exactly right.
Yeah, in the design that Scott built us, he gave us a little bit, a little wiggle room, probably I would say about a 1/16 of an inch, give or take, either way, to get this in line. So, for sure. Other questions?
After there was I want to see how you tuck that back into the bucket, the jacket. So when you sew the tack down, if you're going to, I'll swap and change that camera so you can get a better angle.
We'll come back to that one. Yep.
Then there's. Can you read the one about pricing? I can't get to it. As
Oh, in the meantime, we don't have a video on mixed media like you were talking about.
Yeah.
Do we?
So we've got a part 1 and part 2. So let me write myself a note, and I will post in the comments. Whoever posted that, I will. Who was that? Jacqueline. So Jacqueline, I will post in your comment after this live is over the links to the YouTube for part 1 and part 2 of the multimedia, and then or the mixed media. Sorry, and then I'll also post the link to our operating system that talks about how to use the laser alignment. So if you have any other questions on that after I post it, holler back at us.
We'll talk about that in the session coming up as well for laser alignment.
Oh, cool. So Nate was just reminding me, when we do the laser alignment, we will be talking about the kind of how to align a print to embroidery in that session as well. But in the meantime, Jacqueline and I will get you that information.
There's a question on pricing for applique too.
Yep.
That's kind of hard to nail down without knowing the cost, right? But if it's $1 per 1,000 normally and you got 4,000 stitches, how much additional would you charge? I mean, ballpark, I guess.
Yeah, so I mean a 4,000 stitch design in applique, if you're using the 40,000?
Oh, is it?
Oh, okay. So 40,000
Sorry.
stitches with applique. Let's say it's $1 per 1,000, so let's say it's $40 for embroidery. That may not be right in your area, that may be wrong, but I'm just using that as an example. On applique, I would say that I would be looking at, and once again, post your thoughts on this too, but I would probably charge somewhere between 15 to 20% more for applique than I do normal embroidery, especially if I don't have any competitors in my area offering it. The other cool thing is majority, if not all, of the big box shops that we have a tendency to lose business to do not offer applique online, personalization applique online. So that's kind of an area where you can get a specialty, maybe get those customers back. And who asked that question?
Christopher.
Christopher, good question, Christopher. I hope that answered it. If not, post another question. Say, well, you answered this, but you didn't answer that, okay? So let's go back to the question about tucking it into the garment, because that's all we're going to sew.
That's all you're going to sew?
Yep, that's all I'm going to sew. Now, it would have tacked down over the top of that. Then we would have done the rest of the design, and we would have ended up with a duck that instead of, and I'll bring the hoops over here, instead of just having this piece, would look like this. So you can see that black outline. It might be kind of hard to see once again from the screen, but there's a black column stitch that borders all the way around that Scott did such a great job on. And also I just want to throw out, this is my favorite part, the teeth and the this part of the bill. There's some really cool shading in here. So have fun with this design. This one will be, if you sign up and give us your information, we'll email out this design as well as the Cardinals design. So you'll get both of these applique designs at no cost, just because we love you, Facebook Melco people. So another place that we haven't mentioned yet in this video, For the Love of Melco is a Facebook group. If you're not a part of that, wonderful independent people outside of Melco run that. Rachel, who else? Sam,
Samantha, yeah.
And there's another lady, and I always forget her name, and I apologize, but wonderful, wonderful people, and just an awesome contributors. I've learned so much from that group that I'm just blessed to be a part of it. So.
Turn to Origin for me so I can get the camera set up for this.
Yep.
And then you can continue answering questions with Scott while I work on the camera.
Cool. So other questions, Scott?
I think we're pretty good.
Jacqueline
Okay.
asked how we
just-
make sure that, I think it was Jacqueline, how we make sure that the fabric stays and doesn't move as we're sewing.
Okay.
The adhesive, plus
Light
some
density.
companies sell pre-cut. You might mention that.
Yeah, oh, that's a good point. Yeah, so let's say you don't want to hand cut and you're not quite ready to buy a cutter. Some places, I think Stalls is one of them. There's a whole bunch of independent companies that do this, and I should have done my research a little bit better, so I apologize. But post some thoughts of who you guys use. If you, let's say you're going to do 100 of these ducks or these cardinals, and you just wanted the twill pre-cut for you, so when you get it in the mail, it's all these pieces already. Great point, Scott. You can do that as a service, so you don't have to have, you don't have to go with one or the other. There's other options as well. Good
And
point.
pre-done numbers, letters, all that.
Yep.
You
Yeah.
get the sew file, you get everything.
Yeah. So like Stalls, they have a box, like a cardboard box with little drawers in it that are numbers, you know, like 4-inch or 6-inch or 8-inch or 12-inch, and they can be 1, 2, 3 colors, and it comes with the embroidery file as well. So you could put 1 and 2 together for one jersey and pull the numbers out 12, and so you could do that way as well to do applique.
Where do they sign up for these designs? There's a comment in the post. You'll need to get that.
Yeah, so there's what Nate just said is, where do I get these free designs? We want you to get these free designs. There's a post in this Facebook posting that says, for the free designs, click here. You go in, put your information in, and then we'll email it.
Link to sign up just came with a 404 error. We'll look at that.
We'll take a look at that. It must be a Google problem. So keep trying.
Couldn't possibly be us.
No, well, it's a Google sign-up sheet, so we'll blame it on Google.
And what kind of fabric is that, is the question again.
What kind of twill it is?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, so the question is what kind of twill did we use in these two designs that we just showed you? This is all the sports, the poly, let's see, it's called the
Nylon?
PS sensitive, so pressure sensitive, sticky adhesive twill from Stalls. And I think we actually have the link right to the material so that when I screw the name up like I just did, you can actually look at it. So, but it's something like that. This stuff is from Stalls, both the duck as well as the cardinal. I haven't had a chance to do this stuff over here. I just got in from Twill USA. I can't wait to try it. So you could get it from Twill USA. The stuff that we're using right now that you see is Stalls. So we're going to take and load this design in. And so what I like to do is I'll take and kind of work my hand back and forth with a product like this, and then I'll take and grab the hoop so that you can kind of see my fingers down here. I'll also make sure, if we can go into this over here, I'll turn the grabber in so that I'm not dealing with the needles grabbing the material. And then I'll just take and kind of work myself in like that, get the tabs in, and then kind of work my hand up, and then pop it in place. And then I'm just shoving this material, pulling kind of up on either corner, and I'm pushing it into that bucket. Is that showing up good, guys?
Move your left hand out of the way.
Okay, sorry about that.
So you can see it there.
Yep,
Yeah.
so you can see this bucket back in here. So where the hoop arms attach, there's kind of a gray bucket back in there. I'm just pressing that material back in there. So instead of it hanging down here in this area, which can cause a bind, I'm trying to get that excess material pulled up and put into my bucket.
I have been guilty of using tape to keep things where I want it.
Yep. Yeah, tape works well. I actually saw somebody one time, very, very creative. They took a window squeegee and they attached it to the back of the bucket, and so they could push the material in and the squeegee would hold it so it was sticking down on the back of that bucket and it was holding the material in. So
I've seen little pool noodles used to
shove it into. Yeah, you shouldn't have to do that, but if you're doing a lot of it and it bothers you, yeah, you might MacGyver something like that. So cool. Let me see if I have designs. We talked about that. I think, unless there's other questions, I think we are ready to, by the way, here in Denver, Colorado today, we're supposed to get a cyclone bomb version 2.0.
Yep.
Yesterday, 80 degrees. Today, blizzard.
Blizzard, yeah, 60-mile-an-hour winds.
Yeah, so enjoy the weather wherever you're at. Post questions. You got thoughts on this that I didn't cover, or Scott or Nate and I didn't cover? Please, please, please post them, because we do not know everything. We love to learn, and you guys are the way we learn. Other questions? Great. Have a wonderful day, and thanks for being a Melco customer.